Okay, take a look here. Okay, pleasant to touch, I have no idea what it's going to be talking about. I mean, potentially something about touch, something about sensations. I mean, that's me guessing after I read the passage. So probably not. I mean, probably not when I was reading the title. So you should be careful in the beginning, at least, okay? So it says in the early 1990s, it's kind of, it's kind of dim right now, but let's wait for a second. Okay, so you should do this, right? You should box the year, and it said textbooks, right? So we're gonna treat this like a person. Textbooks acknowledge that human had slow conducting nerves. I have no idea what this is, but asserted that those nerves only responded to two types of stimuli. Okay, so you need to take account of this. So they respond to these two. Right? So you're just taking in facts right now. You should annotate this, right? So slow conducting nerves are going to be pain and temperature. Slow conducting nerves, this is going to be pain and temp. Sensations of pressure and vibration were believed to travel only along myelinated fast signaling nerve fibers. Okay, so these are, I guess, two opposing ideas. So I have slow conducting nerves and I have fast signaling nerves, right? So these, for these, it's pressure and vibration. So that's what you should get in the beginning, which also give information about location. Okay, well, this also. So you should take note of this, right? There's no excuse not to do this. Okay. So this, there's no way around it. If you say, you know, this is hard and I can't remember that, well, you don't have to remember this. You just need to annotate it. You just need to say, okay, so slow conducting nerves, pain, temperature, and fast signaling nerves, it's going to be pressure and vibration. But you need to annotate that. I mean, at least you need to be able to remember that it's in the first paragraph. You don't need to remember this fact. You don't need to memorize it. But you should be able to come back to it. Experiments conducting blocking nerve fibers supported this notion. Okay, so this notion means this whole thing, right? Okay, so I guess we're going to be talking about experiments that show this result. So that's what I'm initially thinking as I'm reading. Experiments blocking nerve fibers supported this notion. Preventing fast fibers from firing, either don't read information that's in between parentheses when you're reading it for the first time. I mean, if they ask you a question about it, come back to it, but don't. Preventing fast fibers from firing seemed to eliminate the sensation of pressure altogether. Okay, so preventing fast fibers eliminate sensation. This is a cause and effect, right? But blocking slow fibers only seem to reduce sensitivity, right? Okay, so we have a whole set of ideas here. That's the first paragraph. No way around this. You should get this. So what happens if we block this? Then this is eliminate sensation. Blocking slow fibers, what's going to happen? Reduce sensitivity. Okay, So let's go to the next paragraph. It says H.O. and his... Okay, so now we're talking about an experiment. So probably this experiment is just going to support this notion, hopefully, okay? It doesn't do so much out of the norm. If it conforms to this, then it's all easy from now, from here, right? Okay, so this guy and his colleagues, like, okay, we have a lot of people, wondered if slow fiber is responsible. Okay, so actually they have a question, right? Wondered if slow fibers responsive to gentle pressure. Okay, so slow fibers might be active in humans as well as in other mammals. Okay, so this was the issue. Are they active? Are slow fibers active in humans? Okay, and then it says in 1993 they corralled 28 young volunteers. Okay, so process, right? Using a technique. Okay, so they use this technique. I don't know what this is. I have probably its definition here. Just gonna go down, right? Up till the results. They showed that soft stroking, okay, so soft stroking prompted, so that's a cause and effect, two different signals, one immediate and one delayed. Okay, so that's the result. So we have our first experiment. This is by H. I'll just say H, right? H-O or H-O, right? This guy, I mean, I didn't read the process, but for the result, it's that cause and effect, right? Soft stroking. Soft stroking prompted two different signals, one immediate and one delayed. The delay, O explains, means that, okay, so this is good, right? So if it says means that, what's after that? What comes after means that? What comes after means that? Significance. The signal from a gentle touch on the forearm will reach the brain about a half second later. So the significance is a comparison, right? So signal from a gentle touch on the forearm reached the brain about a half second later than what? Later than what? I mean, he said there's an immediate and delayed signal, so he's probably talking about the delayed signal. The delayed signal is going to be a half second late. So he's talking about the delay itself, right? And then it says, this delay identified nerve impulses traveling at speeds characteristic of slow unmyelinated fibers, right? So I still don't know what this means. I mean, I thought this was supposed to be the significance, but I'm not getting anything easy, anything intuitive that I can find out. So I need to keep reading. Confirming the presence of these fibers in human hairy skin. Okay, so he confirmed the presence of this in humans. That was his question, right? His question was what? His question was if slow fibers were active in humans, and it said yes, right? So that's our answer. So now I have the significance. The significance is, yes, we do have slow in what? Human hairy skin. Okay, and then I'm not going to read this. Not going to read this. I'm going to go on. And then it says, then in 1999. Okay, so now it's another experiment in 1999, right? This was in 93, right? Okay, so now it's the next one, right? In 99, the group, so it's the same group of people, looked more closely. Okay, so look more closely. So the process is kind of similar at the characteristics of the slow fibers. Okay, so now we're looking at this. Now this is the question. Okay, so what do we know about the slow fibers? Right? That's the question. They named these two threshold nerves C-tactile or CT. Okay, good. So we're just saying, okay, so these slow fibers, we're just going to call them CT. And then it says, because of their exquisite sensitivity to slow, gentle tactile stimulation, but unresponsiveness to noxious stimuli like pinpricks, right? Okay, so that's why they called it CT. I don't really care. But why exactly humans might have such fibers, which respond only to a narrow range of rather subtle stimuli, was initially mystifying. Okay, so I love stuff like this, right? This is a question that they encountered because of this, right? So why is it present? right? So that's the question. That's the puzzle, right? Why is it present? Why do we have it anyway? Unlike other types of sensory nerves, CT fibers could be found only in human hairy skin, such as the forearm or thigh. No amount of gentle stroking hairless skin, such as palms, blah, 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 prompted similar signatures. So it's only here. I mean, we know this. It's only here, right? It's only here. And O and his colleagues decided that these fibers must be conveying a different dimension of information than fast-conducting fibers. So that's what they came down to. So when it comes to slow versus fast, this is also called CT, right? So what's the difference? Different dimension. Okay, so I don't know exactly what this means, but I mean, it has to do with some kind of sensory information, but it's different, right? So they convey different kinds of sensory information, right? That's probably what they mean. They have a different dimension, right? Like it's only going to be like subtle sensory information. You can kind of guess that. And then it says, although microneurography, okay, so this was the technique that we were talking about, can give information about how a single nerve responds to gentle brushing and pressure, it cannot tease out, okay, what does tease out mean in this case, right? I mean, this is in a contrast relationship, right? We have the subordinate clause here and the main clause here. I know it's in a contrast relationship. So microneurography can give information about this, but it cannot give information about this. I guess that's what tease out means, right? So it cannot figure out what aspect of sensation that fiber relays, says O. So what aspect of sensation? So I guess, so there's something that microneurography can do and can't do, right? But what's it focusing on? It should be the main clause always. What's more important? So what's the limitation of microneurography? You can't figure out what aspect of sensation that fiber relays. So this is something that you cannot figure out. And then it says he wanted to know if that same slow nerve can distinguish where. Okay, so again, now he had another question, right? Where the brush touches the arm and whether it can discern the difference between a goat hair brush and a feather. Okay, so now we have another question based on this. It's can you distinguish where I'm touching you, right? Where I'm stroking you, and can it tell the difference, right? Difference between two different kinds of sensation, right? So I guess, goat hair brush and feather, they're gonna feel different, right? You can infer that. They're going to be different, and it's saying, can you tell the difference? Most importantly, could that same fiber convey a pleasant sensation? But this is the most important question, right? So is pleasant sensory information, can that be signaled, right? This is a yes or no, right? That's what they were curious about. Okay, so now I know why the title is Pleasant to Touch. We finally got to the crux of the matter. This is actually the very, very meat of this passage. Very meat of this passage. Okay, so to address the question, O's group sought out a patient known as GL. Okay, so now we have another experiment, right? So in order to find this out, we have another experiment now. Okay, so we looked at this patient, and then more than 2 decades earlier. Okay, so it's describing the process. So I'm just gonna go, right? I'm just gonna go, but she could still sense warmth, suggesting that this is not significance. Okay, this is not. I mean, we didn't even get to the results of the experiment yet. This is just, she could still sense warmth. This is the significance for this statement. It's not the significance for the experiment itself, right? Don't get confused. We're still just describing this patient. This entire paragraph is dedicated to describing the patient, okay? So you should know that, right? We're talking about the, I mean, I know I just skipped, but you should be looking at the beginnings of every sentence. Like you should say, okay, more than 2 decades earlier, she, okay, so we're talking about that patient. What about the next testing showed that she, okay, so still talking about that patient, right? but she could still sense warmth, right? So it's describing her condition, right? Like, what kind of person was she? Why would you test this person instead of a regular person? I guess, you know, there was like a specific thing that they're trying to test, and she was perfect for that, I guess. So let's go to the next part. It says, upon recruiting GL, O tested her by brushing her arm. Okay, so now we're talking about the actual process. She had more trouble distinguishing the direction. Okay, so now it's the result, right? So you should be able to distinguish this. She had more trouble distinguishing the direction or pressure than most subjects, but reported feeling a pleasant sensation. So this is a yes, right? So the answer to this question is, can she feel pleasant? Yes, it was a yes here. When the researchers tried brushing her palm, where CT fibers were not found, she felt nothing. Yeah, so that's something, right? So this is only for the parts where she had CT fibers, right? Okay, and then it says, O used functional MRI studies to examine which areas of the brain lit up when GL's arms was gently brushed. Okay, so again, we have a second process, right? In normal subjects, okay, so I guess this is going to be a comparison between normal subjects and GL, right? Normal subjects, both the somatosensory and insular cortices were activated. Okay, so this were activated both, but, so I guess, you know, it's just going to be one for GL or something. Only the insular cortex, which process emotion, was active when researchers brushed GL's arm. Okay, so for GL, it was only this. Normal subjects, it was these two, right? So it should look something like this, right? This is your result, right? But still, it's the result. I still don't know what this means. So what? So what? So what? I don't even know what a somatosensory is and what the insular cortices are. I have no idea, right? So what am I going to do? I'm just going to go to the next part, tell myself, okay, they're probably going to explain the significance to me now. This solidified the notion that CT fibers convey a more emotional quality. There you go. This is the significance. So based on their study, based on their results, this is what they concluded. CT fibers, more emotional quality, rather than the conscious aspect that helps us describe what we are sensing. CT fibers, it seemed, specifically provided pleasurable sensations. Okay, so the conclusion itself is pretty simple, right? CT fibers convey pleasant sensations. That's what they get to. And that's why I guess the title was Pleasant to Touch, right? So pretty simple. Pretty simple, but we have a lot of studies, okay? So it could be confusing. So when you face SAT wants to test your ability to deal with a lot of information. That's what they want to test. That's why they have these kinds of passages, because, you know, that's basically what reading a science textbook is. You read a lot of information. How do you organize that information? How do you take in that information? So the best thing that you could do, you should just, I'm not saying you should write this down next to your passage or anything, but at least, like right next to your paragraph, you should, it's okay to take small notes if that's going to help you, okay? For some people it does, some people it doesn't, so that's up to you. But you should look for everything. You should know, by the end, you should know that there were 3 major studies, right, done. And they all each had different kind of questions, and they had different results and the significances and stuff like that, right? Okay, so the first experiment, what we got down to was this. Slow conducting nerves were in human hairy skin. And then they did another experiment, but this time they were wondering, well, why is it there, right? This was the answer, right? Saying, yeah, it's a different dimension. They convey a different dimension, and then they wanted to know more about this, and then they did that study with GL, and then at the end, the very conclusion that they got to was pleasant, right? Pleasantness. Okay, so let's go to the questions. 22 said, textbook authors in the early 1990s. Okay, so you should annotate this pretty well, right? So if you did annotate this, you should remember where this is. Or if you don't remember it, if you go back to the passage should be a visual aid for you, right? So where is this information? Textbook in the 1990s. Where was this? Where was this? The very beginning. Would most likely have expected which condition to result from blocking of fast fibers? Simple, right? You should get right to it. What happens if you block fast fibers? Well, you eliminate the sensation, or that. So your answer would be eliminate, right? So okay, so something eliminated would increase. No. Well, no, it's not going to be painful. It's just gone, right? Compensate. No. Ability to perceive would be impaired, right? So it's okay. So where do you get this? Well, it's in the definition right here, right? So it's combining these two things. It's saying, yeah, the definition for fast signaling nerves are, it perceives a pressure and vibration. So that one is eliminated, right? So D is the right answer. And the line reference for this should be easy also. It should be B, right? Is it B? Wait. 4 to 7. Yeah, so you need vibration here. You also, wait, we're believed to travel. Well, okay, so this one does talk about vibration, but let's actually, yeah, but it doesn't have that block bit, but still this is the only possible answer choice, right? Because we don't have that part where we directly talk about the blocking. But this is the closest one that we can talk about, right? So B should be the answer, right? Wait, hold on. Sorry. Okay, 24 active. So this one is A. 25 is C. Wait, sorry. Present. Yes, yeah. So A and C here. What about 26? Okay, so this is asking us about the 1993 experiment. So 1993 experiment, it's here, right? So it's 1993, supported by the findings of this experiment. Okay, so I guess we have all of these, right? So it talked about that delay, right? The immediate response and the delayed response, and then we have the significance saying, the slow conducting nerves, they're present in human hairy skin, right? Okay, let's take a look. Stimulation at bodily extremities. No, we don't. I don't remember anything about this. Presence of hairs and human. Okay, presence of hairs. Okay, so that sounds pretty good, right? Human hairy skin. Lessens. No. Lessens the speed. Is that okay? So this is Did anybody choose B? Okay, so if you chose B, so this one, I mean, B is saying that it's a cause and effect, but you don't know if it's actually because of the hairs, okay? Is that, I mean, that's what B is saying. In essence, it's saying it's because of the hairs that the speed is signaled. Like, I mean, you have all the right ideas here, but logically, it's structured so that it doesn't make any sense. It's not based on what we've read. Okay, if you're confused about this, you should go to the line reference first. Okay, if you were confused with other answer choices. C says gentle pressure is sensed not only by fast fibers but also by slow fibers. Yeah, that's what we found out here, right? So C would be okay, right? The speed at which is the speed. Okay, so it's talking about the speed is dependent on the strength. No, we don't. This is suggesting a correlation. We don't know about this, right? So what would be the line reference for this? Okay, so I'm gonna go back to where 1993 is. Wait. Okay, so up till here, Up till here, it's all process, right? So this whole bit is just process, and here we have the result. So potentially something starting from here, right? So it should be below this point. I can't go before this because I know it's all process, right? They showed that soft stroking prompted two different signals, one immediate and one delayed. Okay, so yeah, we did get signals. So I mean, we were looking. I mean, the question itself was they were wondering if slow fibers responded to gentle pressure might be active in humans, right? This was the question, and then it said, yeah, it did cause, right? The soft stroking did prompt a response, right? So this one is possible. What about C, the delay? Okay, so did anybody choose C here? Anybody choose C for the line reference? Okay, so 28, the delay means that the signal will reach the brain about a half second later. Okay, so yeah, so I guess if you're confused, you can go with this and then B for the previous question, but it's not that cause and effect, right? Do you see a cause and effect here? The signal from a gentle touch on the forearm will reach the brain about half second later. Okay, well, first of all, you chose the answer that talks about human hairy skin, right? So it's not here, right? Okay, so for line reference questions, notice I said it's not, you're not thinking. You shouldn't think. You're looking, you're locating the answer. You're locating the answer that you chose. Okay? Don't make any inferences. Okay? So that's quite huge if you get both of those questions wrong, right? Anyway. Okay, so 28. So 43 to 45. Let's just take a look at this. What idea is this talking about? Well, this is really simple. This is the sentence that talks about the puzzle. I mean, we see this always, right? So they're confused. They're like, okay, why do we have CT fibers to begin with, right? So that was their question. So that's something that they are trying to solve, I guess. So A says identify factors. It's not fail to consider. Okay, so you don't like. There's only one way to take that in, and we've seen them a lot, right? So if you did not choose D here, show a problem from the perspective of O's team, aka puzzle that we always see, then you're thinking too much, right? You should be able to identify this immediately when you're reading the passage. What happens, okay, so why don't you guys close your eyes? Who did not choose D here? Okay, good. Okay, lower your hand, it's okay. Okay, so if you did not choose D, you thought about it way too much. Basically what you got, okay, so I mean, I'm pretty sure when you were reading the passage, okay, you know, this is the puzzle that we talked about, but you weren't so sure of yourself. So I guess when you went to the answer choices and you start reading other answer choices, you just get you just got confused. Oh, it's a puzzle, so maybe it does identify factors that they failed. Yeah, it could be. No, it's just a puzzle, right? We've seen this always. That's how you should label them always. That's why we talked about these multiple times. So immediately you should look for a wording that suggests the puzzle, which is D. Can reasonably be inferred. Okay, so reasonably be inferred. So I can make a little bit of a logical jump. Okay, little bit of a logical jump. That one of the intended goals of the 1999 experiment, okay, so here, right, the goal was, kind of forgot, okay, I kind of forgot. So what do you need to do? I guess you need to go back to 1999. I mean, it's fine, right? Looked more closely at the characteristics of the slow fibers, right? I guess so. This is the question, right? They wanted to find out more about slow fibers. Hey, what do slow fibers do, right? What are some of their characteristics, right? Okay, so it's simple as that. It would be that. But if you look at the answer choices, it's all rephrased. It's saying CT fibers, but you should know that. You should know that CT fibers are slow fibers, right? So precise nature of sensations that CT fibers can convey. Okay, so this is probably, okay, so I would need to go back for this. Actually, that line would not suffice for this to be the answer, but I kind of remember now that I see the answer. So just leave this. Just look at the other answer choices first. B says relationship between body hair was not an issue. It's just that it just so happened that it's there where human hair is present, but hair is not a factor. Hair does not play a role. We didn't discuss that in the passage. Okay? If you thought that body hair plays a role, you made an inference in your head, right? Oh, so it's because, so they just said, yeah, slow fibers are present where you have hair, right? That's a correlation. You know what I mean? But what did you infer? Oh, so it's because of the hairs. No one said that. You know what I mean? Okay? Do we talk about fan death? Do we not talk about fan death? You know how people in Korea, there's still people in Korea who believe that if you go into a room, go into a small room, turn on the fan, and you sleep in front of the fan, you die. You know about that? You guys know about that? Who thinks that's true? Ask your parents. Your parents might think it's true. No offense to them, but this is actually because the news actually reported it so. Like actually, in the 90s, they did. They did say, hey, they died because of the fan. That's that. But you know what was? I mean, they just mistook. They made a mistake, right? They looked at a correlation and then they said, hey, it's a cause and effect. No, yeah. I mean, okay. So how's the summer in Korea? It's really humid and it's really hot, right? So if you're humid and you're hot, right? And you sleep in a closed room, you die. You die. That's just what it is. But because it's cold, because it's humid and because it's hot, you turn on the fan also. But you didn't die because of the fan. Right? There's something else, right? And maybe you had too much to drink, right? And that's why you died. But people look at the fan and it's like, oh, look at this fan. It's coincidentally here. So I guess that's why he died. No. Okay. Same for the human hairs. Okay. We don't really care about the hair. It just so happened that it's there. There is no one really cares, right? C, role played by CT fibers and the perception of pain. I know this isn't true. We weren't concerned with pain. Effect of microneurography. What? This was a technique that we used, right? We weren't trying to find out anything about microneurography. We were using it to find something out, right? So you should be able to eliminate these. So precise nature of sensations that CT fiber can relay. Where do you get that? I mean, the answer that they get is here, right? O and his colleagues decided that these fibers must be conveying a different dimension of information, right? So this is the bottom line that they got to after the entire study. So yeah. So based on this and based on what they said in the beginning, you can do that. But you can also eliminate all three other answer choices because they're wrong, right? Okay, 30. Sixth paragraph. Okay, so let's take a look at the sixth paragraph. Where is this? 64. To address your question, sought out a patient known as GL. Okay, so this is the process. So this is the process, but to be exact, it's talking about GL, right? It's not until the next paragraph that the real process starts. The real process starts here. They recruit him, and then they brush her arm, right? Okay, so this is like what they actually did, but this was actually describing her condition in order to demonstrate that she was indeed like suitable. She was like a suitable subject for this experiment. So so it's D, right? Indicate why GL's medical condition was of value to O's experiment. Okay. Did someone choose A? Okay. Let's go to the next question. According to the passage, GL differed from other test subjects in terms of D. Okay, so I know this, right? So what was the answer? I remember something called the somatosensory, and then, you know, what was it? Insular? What was it? Whatever. I mean, I had something called an S and an I, right? In normal subjects, I got both of these, right? But for GL, I only got S or I only got I, right? It was only one of them. So I wanna choose an answer choice that gets at that idea. Okay, so number of cortices activated. Yeah, that's. I mean, we could say that because we have two things activated here, and we only have one thing here. So I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm saying this is possibly the answer. B, physical dimensions of the somatosensory cortex. No, it's not the physical dimensions of this. I don't even know what this exactly means, right? Just because we have somatosensory here, you shouldn't choose this, because the difference is this. For normal subjects, S and I lit up, but for GL, only S or only I lit up. So I don't know about this, right? Intensity of nerve signals. Okay, so it doesn't have to do with the intensity, right? I don't know how intense it is. Effect of MR, what? Okay, so as much as, so some people might look at this, number of cortices. Well, it doesn't have to do with the number of cortices, but this is the closest thing that we're gonna get to, right? So the only thing that you know is in normal subjects, S and I lit up. GL, only I lit up, right? So it should be A, right? 32, according to the passage, humans experience an emotional aspect of touch when, okay, well, this is emotional aspect, I guess, pleasant, right? Them being pleasant, right? Okay, so brain I mean, this is, why did we mention brain cortices or whatever? This was only to demonstrate this point, right? Like the comparison between normal subjects and GL, right? It has nothing to do with the pleasant feeling or whatever, right? So I don't know. If you chose this, you thought about it too much, right? You made a further inference. You're just like, oh, okay, so that must mean, and then you made your own conclusion. So don't do that. CT fibers are exposed to a stimulus. Yeah, when you stroke gently in human hairy skin. This one's okay. Nerve fibers that sense pain. What? Pain? No. Conscious aspects of sensation. What in the world does this mean? So, no, right? B. Okay, so I'm going to go to the first passage really quick. Wait, any questions on that passage that we just did? Okay, let's take a look here. I'm not going to read this. I'm not going to read this passage, but there are certain inferences that there are certain wrong inferences that you can make based on this passage. So just want to look at that. Why don't you, okay, so number 3. Well, why don't you guys close your eyes? Who chose A here? Who chose B? Chose B? Chose C? Chose D? Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Number 9. Okay. Number 9, what did you get? Who chose A? B? C? D? What about number 10? Who chose A? B? C? D? Okay. All right, let's take a look. Number 9. The word friend is used twice in line 57. Okay, so I want to go back here. So, you guys know who Charles Dickens is, right? You don't want to get him on the literature passage, right? Like, if you get Charles Dickens, yeah, I mean, that's the hardest it can get on an SAT Lit passage. So just, if you get Charles Dickens by any chance, just skip it, go to passage 2. Okay. Anyway, it says Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I read on the cover. So he gave him a present, right? S gave the narrator a present. I was aware that S knew a few authors who frequented his establishment. Frequent in this case would mean visit frequently, right? Frequented his establishment, his bookstore, right? And judging by the care with which he handled the volume, I thought perhaps this Mr. Dickens was one of them. Okay, so he thought Charles Dickens was the bookstore owner's friend, right? We don't know if this is true or not. I don't know. And then he asks him, a friend of yours, and then he says, a lifelong friend. Okay, so now at this point, you know, he says he's his friend. He's his friend. So I need to take that at face value. You know what I mean? Okay, yeah, he's best friends with he's best friends with Charles Dickens. Okay, I want to say best friend. Lifelong friends with Charles Dickens. You should understand it like that, okay? You shouldn't make any inferences until this sentence. What does it say? And from now on, he's your friend too. Okay, so obviously he has a very different definition of what a friend is. A friend does not mean friend in the traditional sense here, right? What does a friend mean? You read someone's book and you're someone's friend. That's his definition, right? Okay, so that's what he means, right? And then in the next part, that afternoon I took my new friend home. Yeah, so now now that he's reading Charles Dickens, Charles Dickens is his friend, right? So that's how you should read, right? Okay, I'm saying don't make any unwarranted inferences. Anyway, so let's take a look at number 9. So it says A says underline. Why do we use the word friend? Okay, so this is again a purpose question, right? So what are we going to do for purpose questions? We're going to read this. We're going to say, okay, so these are the potential goals of the authors, right? So these are the potential goals. Assuming that this is the answer, assuming that it's his goal, would he use the word friend in order to establish this? I mean, to meet this goal, would he use this word? Okay. So if he wanted to underline the importance of the narrator's connection to S, would he use the word friend? Well, no. This is not necessarily about him and S. It's about their relationship to books, right? So not necessarily this. B, stress how friendships helped the narrator deal with this. What? Why are we talking about his home situation? This is a little bit too much. Why are you bringing that element in? If you're bringing this element in, and how do you know it's difficult? Well, I mean, just because his father didn't like him to read, right? Okay, so if you chose B, that you're saying, okay, so that's his difficult home situation, right? His father did not want him to read. But still, why would you use the word friend to convey that difficult home situation? That doesn't make any sense. In what context would the word friend convey, hey, this is your friend. Oh, that means you have a really hard time at home? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? C, emphasize the emotional connection S feels to reading. Yeah, so this is probably it, right? So he doesn't mean literally a friend. He has a different definition for friend, right? And that's like, what is he? His definition of friend was him just reading the book and liking it. So this is good. D, imply that the narrator's sentiments caused him to make an irrational. Well, okay. Well, first of all, what was that irrational decision? And okay, well, then let me ask you this: if someone uses the word friend, do you say, hey, are you saying I'm making an irrational decision? If you're calling me, in what situation would that happen, right? I mean, so C would be the right answer. I mean, you would, if this is your goal, if you want to stress an emotional connection, yeah, you would call someone a friend, right? If you want to convey the fact that you're close to somebody, you would use the word friend, right? That is understandable. That's common sense, right? Number 10, which statement best characterizes the relationship between S and Charles Dickens? So this is kind of an extension on number 9, right? So do you think they really are best friends? They really are lifelong friends? No, he just has a different definition of what a friend is. Okay, so A says, S models his own writing. I don't know if he writes anything. Okay, he owns a bookstore. That's all I know about him. Is an avid admirer of Dickens's work. Okay, so this is possible, right? So I like his writing so much that I call him a friend. It's not just one of the books that I read. The author is my friend. So this is possible. I'm not saying it's the answer. It's possible. C, S feels a personal connection to details of Dickens's biography. We never read his biography. Where did this show up? Right? It's not a biography. Okay? D, S considers himself to be Dickens's most appreciative reader. Is this some kind of competition? This is a competition? This is a comparison, right? So by saying friend, he's saying, hey, nobody likes Dickens better than me. I'm Dickens' #1 fan. No. Okay, so it would rather be B. Okay, any questions on this passage? If not, okay, let me tell you the answers. Number 1, this is A. This is A. Number 2 is C. C. Number 3 is C. And this one is D. Yeah, D. Number 4, D, right? Number 5, A. Number 6, D. Number 7, D. Number 8, B. Number 9, C, we did. Number 10, B, we did. Okay, any questions on this passage?
Can you go for 5?
Okay, let's go 5. It can reasonably be inferred. Okay, so it's reasonably be inferred, so this one, you can afford to make a little bit of a logical jump, okay? You should always take note of that. So from the why would he use the word reasonably be inferred? Because he says main reason, right? So he's saying, hey, cause and effect may not actually be present in the passage, but still you can kind of infer it, right? Main reason that the narrator considers great expectations to be the best gift he have ever received. Okay, so we need to go to the passage, but sometime after he got the book, of course, right? But where does it mention the fact that it was his best gift? Okay, so the best gift, where is it? Best gift, friend home, hid it. I read it about 9 times. I didn't have any other, okay, so he read it 9 times for 2 reasons. Number 1, no other book, partly because I did not think there could be a better one. Okay, so he thought it was a best book. And I was beginning to suspect that Mr. Dickens had written it just for me, right? So he had a personal connection to this. Soon I was convinced that I didn't want to do anything else in life but learn to do what Mr. Dickens had done. Okay, so what did he do? Writing, right? So he's saying, yeah, I was convinced. I was convinced that I wanted to become a writer, right? Okay. So that's the information that I got. And then, oh, here's where it's stated, right? So best gift. But here, if you take a look, you can't find any reasons for it being the best gift, right? It's just the interaction itself, so you can't really say anything about this. So with that in mind, I want to go to the answer choices. So A says, reading the book convinced him that he wanted to be a writer. Okay, so this is present. So this is present. So this is actually one of the, it was stated in the passage. So if you eliminated this, you're doing something wrong. Okay, so you should not have eliminated this. You should have said, okay, so I'll let this go. Okay, I'll see other answer choices, but this was there at the very end sentence. So he's only ever been given sweets and snacks. Really? I mean, he was given this, but only this. Maybe he was given a car. Who knows, right? Who knows about that? The gift meant that St. Pierre held him in high regard. How do you know? Maybe he hated him. Okay. Let's say that St. Pierre hated him. Does that go against anything that we read? Not really, right? It logically doesn't, right? I mean, he can still give him great expectations, right? Hey, he could just be like, 먹고 떨어져, never come back to the bookstore. I'll give you this, get the hell away from my store, never come again, right? I mean, no one knows. We don't know about this. S was a friend of the book's author. Well, this isn't just true. He has a different definition of a friend, right? So it should be A. Did you choose D? C?
I didn't choose.
Huh?
I was looking for C and A.
Okay. Yeah, so this one, if you want to, okay, so this one is directly stated, right? This one, it's present. This idea itself is rephrased and in the passage. But this idea, you need to infer. You need to dig, right? You need to dig and think, oh, he held him in high regard. Well, maybe he treated him like, you don't know about that. You know that he didn't expect to be paid by the boy, right? But maybe it's because he wanted to get rid of him also. He was like, that 거지 새끼 came again, right? Who knows, right? Okay. Okay, let's take a break and then we'll come back to the writing section. Okay, let's go over the questions. Two, 25, 23,
10.
3 and 16.
3, 3,
3 and 16.
28.
24. 8.
Okay, let's take a look at 2. It's asking for sentence 5's location. So I'm gonna take a look here. Simple, right? Okay, especially if you have a sentence order in the beginning of the test, it means it's going to be pretty easy, right? When you see this, you should think, okay, before this sentence, it's gonna be discussing the debt, right? So I'm just gonna look for that, right? So let's take a look. Wait. Well, yeah, actually, I should. Okay. I guess okay, I see why you can be confused. So if you take a look here, I do have one depth here. 1,700 feet under the ocean surface is the summit, blah, blah, blah. And then appears to have been continuously active. It even grew 130 feet in height. Okay. But, okay, so now I guess you were confused between after sentence 1 and after sentence 2. Okay. So we have those two options, I guess, because technically they both discuss that depth. So, but I mean, after this, you're done, right? So it's either one of those two, right? So it's either this or this, right? Then what you should at least take a look at this sentence, and now you need to be thinking about the content, right? So water pressure suppresses the explosive force of the volcano's eruptions, allowing scientists to observe them up close via remotely operated vehicles. Okay, so water pressure suppresses force, so scientists can watch, right, with vehicles. Like, this is the idea. Okay, so let's go back. So if we put it after sentence 1, I think that would make a lot of sense. Why? Because then in the next sentence it says, surprisingly, the volcano appears to have been continuously active, according to the scientists, I guess, because they've been observing this. But if we put it after here, right, yet, then we have this contrast word. So what's the idea that comes before here? If we were to put sentence 5 in between here, then it's saying sentence 5 and this sentence is in a contrast relationship, But let's take a look at this sentence. Yet despite the hostile environment created by blah, 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 life is thriving there. Well, actually, then you should think about two different scenarios. Is this, okay, so if it's continuously active, but life is thriving there, it seems like that contrast established itself pretty well. So so sentence 2 and 3 should not be separated, right? So it should rather be sentence 5 comes right after sentence 1, right? So it should be B here. Okay. Take a look here. Well, okay. So this is showing the relationship between the clause. This part, this whole part, and then this part, right? So let's take a look. So N is far below the ocean's photic zone where sunlight drives photosynthesis. Okay, so it's implying that we don't get photosynthesis here, right? So it's below this point where we get sunlight. Bacteria supporting a unique food web have adapted to this perpetually dark environment, right? So we don't have this. So let's think about this. Is this a continuation? We don't get this. So therefore, bacteria supporting a unique food web have adapted to this perpetually dark environment. Possibly, it's okay, right? Okay, cause and effect's okay. So I don't know how to explain that. That's what you need to think about. Just think about it logically. Okay, so we're below the, we don't get sunlight. Okay, think about it this way. We don't get sunlight, so they adapted to this perpetual dark environment. It's possible, okay? So cause and effect's okay. What about continuation? They don't get photosynthesis and they, okay, so maybe some kind of continuation is also possible. What about a contrast? Yeah, contrast also possible. Like the environment is terrible, right? The environment is terrible. We don't get any sunlight, but they adapted. So that's okay also. So there's a lot of things that work. So now if you take a look here, so A is a contrast, so it's okay. What about afterward? Well, it's not a sequence of events. So B is gone. What about furthermore? Well, it's not illustrating on this point, right? Or it's not giving like an additional information. And it's not similar at all. It's not two parallel ideas, right? If you were to use similarly, you would need to say something like this. Okay, so they don't get sunlight and they also don't get whatever, right? They don't get sunlight and it's also terrible in this way. No, so it should be A. Okay, so this is actually asking for us to set up the information in the next sentence. Okay, so set up the information in the next sentence. Okay, so I'm just going to take a look at the next sentence. They, all right, here we go. So they, right? So whatever that's going to come before this, right, is going to be they. So as of right now, shrimp of that species yeah, I mean this is the plural form for shrimp, right? Also, so you can, I guess you can do this, so it technically works. But anyway, shrimp of that species also graze on bacterial filaments as juveniles, and then they feed on the L shrimp and other organisms that are overcome by the toxic plumes of gas and ash. But I need to kind of think about this also. Why? Because I don't know that species. Are that species referring to L shrimps also? In that case, it wouldn't make any sense. Why? Because L shrimps feed on the L shrimp. They eat each other. So I don't know. So I need to go back to confirm that, right? So the L shrimp spend most of their time grazing, blah, 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 evading another previously known, okay, so they're actually this shrimp is evading another species of shrimp, right? So, okay. So in order for me to find, I'm looking for information on that species. I know that technically we only need to look at this sentence, but it's inevitable that you need to look for this because it's using it's forcing you to go back here because you need to know what that species is referring to. And so here's L shrimps, right? And here's another species, right? But they try to evade these species, right? So that's mentioned in the idea before. Okay, so let's say they feed on the L shrimp. Okay, so I guess this sentence is about the this shrimp, this species, right? And other organisms that are overcome by the toxic plumes. Okay, so this is what they eat. This is what this species eats. Okay, so which one of the following choices best sets that up? So you should be thinking about that. So what does setup mean? Sets it up means it gives you a foundation for you to discuss this, right? It's not necessarily saying talk about some other stuff, right? Hey, give me another sentence that talks, give me another piece of information that talks about their diet. No, their diet is mentioned here. I need to set that up. I need to set a ground for me to discuss the diets of these species. So, okay, so A says, resulting from their ability to cope with the noxious environments around the volcano. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad, right? Because, this could potentially, their ability to cope could potentially affect their diet, right? So they can cope here, so they eat other stuff there, potentially. Okay, so it's okay. But their adoptions are not yet fully understood. I don't care about you understanding. I want to discuss their diet. Thriving in an unusual ecosystem that also includes crabs, L's, and B's. Why? Why do we need to discuss all of these? So they thrive, but why would that set this up? If you're kind of confused, well, yeah, okay, maybe perhaps. Like if you extend your thought, far enough, you could find some connection, but just leave it for now. But as adults, their claws are large enough for the shrimp to be predators. Predators? Sounds pretty good. Okay? So they do this. They feed on the shrimps, the other L shrimps, right? So this sets it up the best, right? So they have these claws that can get to these other species. Eight. Okay, so you want to look at the shortest answer choice first, okay? So I'm just going to check this, see if this works, okay? If this works, I will use it, okay? Unless it changes the meaning, okay? During an underwater eruption, steam quickly condenses, okay? So this is the subject, steam quickly condenses, and it says steam leaves only. Okay, yeah, they both have the same subject. So why not do this, right? Why not just connect the two verbs and make it into a sentence like this? So this is good, right? So it works, so I'm just gonna go with it, right? So for the, like I said, I think I discussed this yesterday. If it's a sentence combination question, and if it's a short combination question, you wanna look at the short one first. Check if it works. If it doesn't work, move on to the next one, right? Okay, 10. Well, this is just asking about the possessive, right? We don't have many worlds, okay? We don't have a lot of worlds. It's just a world, right? right? Not this also. So I want to look here. The oceans absorb? Well, if it's in the possessive, I need a noun right after this. It doesn't work, so C. Should we do this or should we add this or no? Right? Okay. So let's take a look. As the carbon dioxide level in Earth's atmosphere rises, the world's ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide. Okay, so I guess, okay, so carbon dioxide level rises, they absorb more carbon dioxide, and then let's take a look. Organisms flourishing near the volcano may help biologists understand how life adjusts to very acidic conditions. Okay, fine. Let's take a look here, which increases their acidity. All right. Now I see that logical gap, right? Why? I mean, if we don't have this, I don't think this is going to make much sense. This is closing that logical gap, right? So I would say yes, and I would choose one that points at that logical gap. It's bridging a logical gap. So A says yes because it explains the relevance of this sentence to the point made in the paragraph. Yes, it does, right? This is what it means. It closes the logical gap. It bridges the logical gap. B, yes, because it helps the reader understand why organisms. What? No, I mean, why is it talking about the content? No, I don't want any answers like this. So A should be the answer. Okay, most effective version. Okay, so this is kind of a, non-traditional question. You need to think about the point of emphasis also, okay? Point of emphasis and I don't know, we'll just take a look, okay? So let's just take a look. So A says, public transportation is used by more people when people do not have to pay a fare. Okay, so this is talking about, making public transportation free and whatever, okay? And it's saying, yeah, people use public transportation more when they don't have to pay, okay? So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with this. Let's take a look at B. More people use public transportation. Now you need to think about this in comparison to A. What's the difference between A and B? So A is used in a passive voice. B is used in the active voice. So I would go with the active voice over the passive voice, right? We went over this before, right? So whenever you, I mean, if all else is equal, I'm saying like grammatically it's correct, and everything else is equal, you need to think about this, active versus passive. So A is preferable to B, so I'm going to get rid of B. If people do not have to pay a fare, more of those people. Okay, so here you see this repetition here. Okay, so I don't want to necessarily repeat this unnecessarily. More of those people. I mean, you don't need to say that. You would wait. I didn't mean to eliminate B. I wanted to eliminate A. Yeah. So B is still preferable to C. What about D? Using public transportation is done by. Okay, so also passive voice. So B would be the most concise version and clear way to say this. Introduces the paragraph, okay? So we need to take a look at the paragraph itself, okay? So let's take a look. All public transportation systems are subsidized. What does it mean, subsidized?
Support financially.
Yeah, so the government gives them money, right? Subsidized by the government to some extent, but large systems gain a substantial portion of their operating revenue from fares. And then it says, okay, so they do get money, but still they kind of depend on the fare, right? So it's saying the fare is important. Since systems that go fare-free see increases in ridership, they often must operate more buses and trains and hire more drivers and other personnel. Right, okay, so these are talking about the undesirable consequences that could potentially happen if you make it fair, if you make it free, if you make the public transportation free, that they are losing a key source of funding. Right, okay, so advocates of fare-free policies claim that the cost, okay, so this is probably going to be the opponent's point of view, and then he's probably going to counter this. Advocates say that the cost of these policies are largely offset, right? That's what they say, right? But a recent study, blah, 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 found this outlook to be way too sunny. Well, it probably means positive. We have a question for this. So, so this is a counter argument. So what is this paragraph doing? It's basically saying, yeah, you shouldn't really go fare free. You shouldn't make public transportation free, right? It's talking about some of the negative consequences that could potentially happen, and it offers a counter argument to the advocate's point of view. So let's take a look. 16A says, can also have a devastating effect on a city's transportation budget. Yeah, so it's financially, it can hurt them. So this one is okay. Also requires planners to make careful considerations about changes. Well, this is way too specific. I need something that introduces, well, this could be, this could be one of the points that supports the main point, but it doesn't introduce the paragraph necessarily. It could be one of the points, but not this. Might also have a negative impact on the environment. Okay, so again, this is just an additional point. D, has the drawback of increasing crowding. Again, this is an additional point, right? So, but this one can encompass the idea that follows, because yeah, we talk about this, right? They depend on fares, but if we see an increase in that, we need to get more blah, 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 and we lose a key source of funding. These people say this is good, the cost is offset, but no, it's actually not, right? So it's talking about money. So A is the best answer here. Best conclusion to the passage. Okay, so it's not necessarily telling you to recap the main idea. Okay, so that there's a big difference between a conclusion to the passage and which one of the following reiterates the main idea of the passage. If it says just reiterate the main idea, it means read the passage and just sum it up in one sentence, right? But this one's not asking you to sum it up. It's telling you to choose an answer choice that ends it, right? I mean, so no new ideas, right? I mean, you can't just introduce a brand new idea that's not going to be explored properly. You can't have some kind of guideline sentence here. And you don't necessarily need, although it could be a main idea sentence, you don't necessarily need to reiterate that main idea, right? So let's take a look. A says research about, well, no, way too specific. Why are we talking about this to end the passage itself? Like, I mean, I don't think this is a very nice conclusion. What about B? Subways will prove to be more important than buses. We never made this comparison, right? Why would we do this? It's not even recapping one of the ideas. It's not ending the train of thought that we were having. So not this. See, public transportation should be cheaper, but not free. Huh. Okay, so I guess this, I don't know. Maybe you can think about this. Possibly. Okay, so let's take a look at D. Fare-free public transportation is not the answer. Okay, so it's either between C or D. Let's see what the difference is. So this one is saying fare-free public transportation should not happen, but this one is saying it should be cheaper. But did it say anywhere in the passage that it should be cheaper? Maybe he wants to even raise prices. You don't know about that. It's unexplained. You can't really say this. But this is exactly what he's been bashing throughout the entire passage. So D should be the right answer here. Okay, so it's a pretty simple sentence. Why wouldn't they? Okay, so I guess I just need to take a look here, right? Upon the arrival of, well, okay, it's about wet plate photography, and it's an old technique, right? But in the beginning, we're talking about the digital camera. So you should think, okay, we're not going to necessarily discuss digital cameras forever. I'm going to get to this eventually, right? Okay, so digital camera, upon the arrival of the digital camera, professional photographers harummed that they produced ugly, low-resolution images. You guys not probably remember this. Have you guys seen like really old digital cameras? Yeah? Like how old?
Like, I saw one Polaroid that it was.
No, that's not a digital camera. You're wrong. They shoot at like 480 pixels and stuff. Anyway, okay. So they didn't like the digital camera, right? The photographer said, I don't like digital cameras. Yet eventually the vast majority of them traded film for megapixels. Okay, so eventually they changed. And then it says, the latest digital cameras take pictures so crisp that the images in them appear to be die cut. Okay, so crisp that I don't know exactly what he means by die cut, but it's kind of like, I guess, like something that could be potentially bad. I mean, the connotation looks bad, right? I mean, it's too crisp, right? It's beyond what's necessary. Even today's humblest smartphones snap bright, sharp photos. Okay. A few contemporary photographers, however, have embraced an anachronistic. What does this mean? Anachronistic means going against time, right? So it seems like, I mean, it doesn't belong in its generation, kind of thing, right? Embraced an anachronistic method that was state-of-the-art technology when it was invented in 1851, wet plate photography. So they embraced an old technique. That's what the passage is saying. Okay, so let's take a look here. Why wouldn't they? Okay, so first of all, this is our hint. They. Okay, so apparently, I guess, they did something. Right? So they did something, and I guess after that sentence you can say, why wouldn't they? Okay, so now you should, I mean, I guess you could check one by one. So if you put it after sentence one, why wouldn't they? Okay, so I guess, yeah, they complained that it was a low resolution. Why wouldn't they? Okay, possibly, yeah. What about after sentence two? Yet eventually the vast majority of them traded film for megapixels. Why wouldn't they? The latest digital cameras take pictures so crisp. Oh, okay, good. So if I put it here, it's better. I mean, I could put it after sentence one, but it doesn't connect to sentence two then. But if I put it after sentence two, it points out, yeah, there's a lot of reasons to do this. Why wouldn't they? And then he talks about the reasons to make that switch. Latest digital cameras take pictures really crisp, right? So yeah, it's pretty obvious as to why they would make that switch. So after sentence two would be best here. So B is the answer. 25, should we add this or no? Okay. All right, so I'm going to be pretty forgiving, right? So that's the idea. As long as it's relevant, as long as it's not completely off the topic or it doesn't repudiate what's been said, I want to put it in. But let's take a look. Wet plate photographers essentially create their own film. Okay, so they make their own film. Process can be dangerous. Okay, so dangerous given that it requires volatile chemicals to take a wet plate photograph. Photographers usually first arrange or pose their subjects before mixing with blah, 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 blah. Okay, I think I get it now. It's just talking about the process, right? It's saying what they do. Let's take a look here. It's also labor intensive. Oh, okay. So if I put it here, it's dangerous and it's labor intensive involving several intricate steps. Oh, that's good, right? If I say it involves several intricate steps and then I discuss the process, that would explain, right? So I'm going to go with A or B. And then A says because it serves as an effective transition, of the main idea of the previous paragraph. No, it's not about the previous paragraph. It's about what's about to follow. So B says, yes, because it sets up the paragraph's outline of the process. There we go. So B. The writer wants to emphasize how quickly wet plate photographers have to work, right? Okay, so we talked about this before, right? So if I just say, like, let's say, for example, there's like this country that you don't know of, okay? Where's a country that you guys haven't been to? Okay, so anyway, theoretically, let's say, right, you guys have never been to the States. You lived in Korea your entire life, so you don't know anything about the United States, okay? And then you meet a person from the States, and that person tells you, hey, how much do you get paid a year? Like, what's your salary? And he said, okay, I get paid $50,000 a year, okay? So what would that Korean think? He would have no idea. Okay, so that's the thing with numbers. We talked about this before, right? Let's say, for example, hey, 짜장면 used to cost 500원, like back in the day, back in the 80s or something like that. Would that mean anything to you? No, you don't. Because you don't have a standard for comparison. You know what I mean? Do you guys know what I mean? Like you would say, oh, that's the equivalent of 6,000원 nowadays. Then you know, oh, okay. I mean, it's about the same price as nowadays. If they say it cost 500원 and they say it's the equivalent of 10만 원 nowadays, then you would go like, okay, that's a lot now. Okay, I guess 500원 is a lot. You need a point of reference. Same here. Okay, the photographer has minutes to develop it. Is this a lot or no? You have no idea. You have no idea if this is a lot. As opposed to what? As opposed to seconds? Like some people might have seconds to develop it. You don't know. Some people might have days to do it. You don't know if this is a lot or no. So that's what it's asking for. So that's why you need to say mere. You have just minutes to develop it. That's what it's saying. That's what mere means. Just, simply, right? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at 32. What kind of question is this? Can somebody tell me?
Sentence structure?
No. Why would, okay, come on. You really can't do that. You really shouldn't be doing that. It's not, guys, what does a sentence structure question ask for? You're looking at this, right? If this rule is satisfied, or if you're doing this, 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 right? So it's asking for these, right? That's what a sentence structure question is. This one gave us the entire sentence. Wow, how can this be a sentence structure question? What is this asking for? Redundancy. Okay, so how did you know? Well, I don't know. You can only find this out if you tell yourself that it's a redundancy question. And I told you guys to do that, right? Well, first check if it's a modifier question. Well, it can't be. It can't be. I don't see any modifiers here. Well, I guess like here, I see it here, like shifting, arm or leg shifting, blah, 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 blah. This thing, I see one modifier, but I don't see any other modifiers here. Can it be a comparison question? No, I mean, I don't see any comparisons. Word pair, I don't see not only either or. Well, then it must be redundancy, okay? If you tell yourself it's a redundancy, then you should see, okay, so I have this idea here. Since the film requires long exposures, moving subjects blur. So because of the long exposures, they blur. A shifting arm or leg might even disappear because of the lengthy exposure time required. This is redundant. It's already been mentioned. You can just illustrate that. You can just say, yeah, it might even disappear. And that would be the end of it. You don't need to mention the long exposure again, right? So D, right? So A is redundant. What about B? Shifting during the long long exposure time. C, long exposure time. Okay, 37. Okay, so this is a transition between this sentence and the last sentence to the previous paragraph, right? So I just want to take a look here first, right? Okay, so just gonna start reading from like here because this is like a quote that we have. Since the South, just to get a sense, right? Okay, since the South Street Seaport area was a bustling commercial center for early colonists, L anticipated that a rich history lay beneath the pavement. Okay, so that's what she has, right? She had a sense of anticipation. Oh, rich history, right? There might be rich history. That was her anticipation. And then it says, it's our job to document and recover that history before it's lost, right? Okay, so it's our job to do that. All right, so she had that anticipation, and we have a quotation saying, yeah, it's our job to do that, right? We want to recover that history. So let's take a look at the next sentence. It says, the team faced obstacles. Oh, there you go. Okay, so she was trying to do something, and then they faced obstacles. Okay, like I said, you can say, and then, I guess something like that. So if you have a sequence, maybe you can kind of think about it, right? Sequence works. Continuation sequence works. Cause and effect. Could that be a cause and effect? No, it's not a cause and effect. They were trying to do, so they faced the obstacle. Is that something that naturally happens whenever you're trying to do something? So no, it's not a cause and effect. So I want to get rid of A. That's not a cause and effect. Can it be a contrast? Yeah, it could be a contrast, right? They were trying to do this, but they faced obstacles. That's okay. So though is okay. Well, meanwhile means like on the other hand, right? So it's not like two sides to the coin or anything like that. So meanwhile is gone. Similar. It's not similar at all. It's not similar at all. What happened before? It was saying they anticipated this, and their goal was to recover the history. So this works the best, right? 41. Sets up the example discussed in the following sentence. So it's not this sentence, it's the following sentence, right? All right. So starting from here, right? So I want to look here, and that's going to set up the examples. Examples are here. I want to set this up using this part, right? So I don't want another example. I want to set the examples up. I don't want another example. I just want a statement that can encompass these examples, right? So colonial era New Yorkers went to great lengths to secure fresh drinking water. Okay. So they did a lot of things to get fresh drinking water, and given the effort involved, blah, 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 to bring in blah, 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 digging very deep wells, blah, 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 doing this. So they did all of this in order to do this, right? So that's, I guess that's what's in the next sentence, right? Good? All right, so let's go back. Let's take a look. A says, A says the various kinds of construction materials. Well, we don't necessarily have materials that, I guess we have a wooden pipe, right? But I mean, that's about it. What kind of other materials, right? I mean, what other construction materials do we have? Well, it's not necessarily about that. They were just trying to get fresh drinking water, and they did all of these things to get fresh drinking water. So not this. B, rituals. What? What kind of rituals, right? So I don't see any rituals. C, public utility planning and infrastructure development. Yeah, this could be it actually. Utility planning and infrastructure development. Now let's take a look. Okay, so could this be utility and infrastructure? Yes, wooden pipes, right? Digging very deep. Yeah, these are all infrastructure, right? So C would probably be the answer, but I want to take a look at how they were financed. Okay, so no, I don't have any information regarding how they were financed. So that's gone. 42, maintains the style and tone of the passage. Okay, so, all right. Oh, 피땀 눈물, right? Isn't there a song called 피땀 눈물? Eh? You guys all know that song? 피땀 눈물? Do you guys know what BTS stands for? Oh, no, okay. I'm not talking about like 방탄소년단, but like BTS for 교포 people. Huh? No. Like way before BTS, there was something called BTS. Do you know? Okay, like this is way before BTS. Okay, this was like when I was in like middle school. Like everybody, like all the Korean Americans, they're saying BTS. What's BTS? Burning 똥구멍 sensation. Why? Like you eat something spicy, and then the next day, burning 똥구멍 sensation, right? Like this was actually a thing, right? And so when BTS first came out, and then they have 피땀 눈물 as their song, I'm just like, okay, is this like a comedy troupe? Like okay. Anyway, like it's a thing. Like I guess it's not for like, I don't know. I mean, if you go to like Koreatown or whatever, I mean they'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah. So I laughed when they first came out. BTS, I mean, come on, really? Not even one person. Okay. Think about this. So style and tone of the passage. I mean, this passage, I mean, I didn't see anything that would suggest this kind of rhetoric, right? It's pretty formal. It's pretty formal in its nature. So I would, okay, effort sounds okay. This I want to get rid of. I mean, strength and force, this is a little bit too much. Hassle, well, this is too informal also. So I would just go with effort. It sounds fine. I mean, this passage is very academic in its nature, right? So it's okay. Okay, so I feel like C or D is going to be the answer here. Why? Because I mean, yeah, it's probably gonna. You've seen these questions a lot, right? When you just get a random pronoun and then you need to decide what's the antecedent. But when you're doing that, you need to think about the meaning, right? Through such discoveries, they tell the story of a city's history in a new way. So who is this going to be? Is this going to be the New York, like the people in the past? Or are they going to be the urban archaeologists? So it's probably going to be them. But can we just say they? Well, if we just say they, it's kind of unsure, right? Like it becomes pretty fuzzy, the distinction. So you wouldn't know. So I would need, I mean, it's usually, okay, I'm not saying like 100% of the time, but usually, when you get like a pronoun question, you get something like this, right? You get something like singular, singular, and then like a plural, and then like a specified noun. You know what I'm saying, right? So we can get like they, them, it, and then like urban archaeologists. It's usually the specified noun, right? Usually when the distinction is, you have like multiple plural nouns that come before this and you're kind of confused, and they never ask you for former and latter and something like that. So it's usually this, but anyway, still can't get over that. Oh, is that like, you guys like that kind of humor? Is that what it is? Okay. Okay, any other questions that we didn't go over? Yeah.
Can you go over 44?
44, let's take a look. So, writer wants to conclude the passage with a quotation from her that illustrates the broad impact of her team's work. So basically, you just need to answer this question, right? Broad impact of her team's work. Okay, so, all right. A says, one of my favorite, really? One of my favorite things would illustrate the broad impact of the team's work? No, come on, right? New York City construction has a lot of stops and starts. How would that connect to their work, right? I want to say, okay, so they had a lot of impact, right? Finding the bits and pieces that were actually used by the people in the past makes New York City's history real. Potentially, I'm not a big fan, but yeah, right? This is talking about their work, right? Finding bits and pieces, and that's going to have an historical impact. So I guess possibly. We call our archaeological technique monitoring. Okay, it talks about their work, how they call it, and we work hand in hand with the contractors and are part of their team. But what about the impact? So this is how they work. This is what they call their technique, but what's the impact? So C would be the right answer. Others? Wait, who lived in the States before? You guys never heard of BTS? How many years?
I came in when I was 3 years old.
3?
Yeah.
Well, then you wouldn't know. What about you? When? Huh?
I'm still in the state. From like 8th grade.
Okay. Where?
Maryland.
Maryland? Okay. Okay, let's take a break and then we'll come back, do the reading. You guys are done for the questions, right? No more questions? You sure? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, good. Okay, good job. Let's take a look at, we're going to go back to reading, okay? Wait, didn't we do this passage before? It was included again. Did you guys do it again? Really? You did it again? Gonna okay, then I'm gonna go to yesterday's. Yesterday we didn't go over the questions, right, for that history passage. Okay, so here, so this passage, it was the first point. You guys remember this, right, from yesterday? We went over it briefly. So she starts off with the opponent's view, right? What was the opponent's view? It's not for women to discuss the subject of slavery. Don't discuss it. You're a woman. Don't do it, right? That's what the opponents say. But she says to that, well, it's not only a political question, right? It's not just a political question. It's also a question of justice, humanity, morality, and religion, right? And so we have a stake in this, right? We also care about this, so we do have a right to discuss this, right? So that was, and she uses a lot of rhetorical questions. She's saying, are you saying we don't have a stake in what matters to us this much, right? So those were the points that she was making. And then after this, she talks about the Constitution of the United States, right? And then what was it saying? It was saying that, the North is pledged for the suppression of domestic insurrections. Domestic insurrections, talking about potentially if the slaves revolt, right? Then, the North is obliged to fight alongside the tyrant, which is the South or the ones instituting slavery, right? So she's saying, okay, there's potentially going to be some kind of civil war, right? And if that war breaks out, who's going to go fight? My brother, my husband, and my family, my friends, right? People around me are going to go and fight. And so, yeah, we do have a stake in this, right? Because people around me are also affected by this, right? So that was her argument here. So this was the first point, and the second point was talking about the war. And then after that, she comes back and she says, well, say that it is a political question, right? Like you said, let's say admitting it to be a political question. Yeah, like you said, let's assume that it is only a political question. But still, can't we talk about political questions then? That was her point, right? Because, if it's a political question, it's something that concerns our country, and our country I care about, right? I care about our country. As a woman, why should you not care about your country? Her primary argument was kind of saying, like, when she's making this counter argument that it's not only a political question, but it's also other kinds of questions, she's saying, well, the qualities that you require of women, right? The feminine qualities, they don't necessarily go against justice, right? You tell women to be gentle, but yeah, I can still be gentle and care about justice and all these other equality issues and stuff like that, right? So that was the passage in a nutshell, right? So let's take a look at the questions. It says, so 32, main purpose in the passage. Okay, so main purpose, we know that she is talking at this convention, right? She's talking at this convention and she's discussing, she's discussing what the opponents said, and she says, hey, we need to, I left that part out, but these points are enough to awaken the slumbering power of women who up to this point have been doing not much. But she says we should take action, kind of thing. It was that kind of passage. But she's not necessarily accusing anybody. Okay, so I could say she's accusing people who tell women to stay out of this. But is it accusing fellow abolitionists? Potentially. Potentially it could be the fellow abolitionists who are saying, hey, you guys should stay out of this. You women should stay out of this. But of overlooking the contributions, well, here it's wrong, right? It's not, she did not talk about contributions of women. That's an irrelevant idea, right? So A is not the answer. What about B? Argue that the causes of abolition and women's rights are continuations of the spirit of the American Revolution. Okay, so who chose B? Okay, nobody chose B. And in that other class, I think someone chose B. But we didn't talk about the American Revolution, right? What's the American Revolution? What's the American Revolution? What's the American Revolution? Yeah. Yeah. It's a Revolutionary War, right? Them trying to gain independence, right, from Great Britain, right? So we didn't talk about that, although we did talk about the Constitution, but that's not the same, right? So C, make the case that women's rights are meaningless. Wait, did we talk about women's rights? No, we didn't talk about women's rights. This was not an issue, right? So this is also irrelevant. Encourage women to see their participation in the abolitionist cause. Yeah, so abolishing slavery as just and important, right? So just would mean like it's that just when you say justice or justify, right? A just cause, right? Okay, 33. Which statement provides the best description of a technique that Smith uses throughout the passage to advance her main point? Okay, so I know that this passage was very full of rhetorics, right? It didn't have much substance. No offense. I'm not saying it's like a bad article or anything. It had very few points, but mostly she advanced her reasoning through like her diction, right? As if we look at it as an SAT essay, right? Her diction, her word choices, and rhetorical questions and stuff like that, right? She presents claims in the form of rhetorical questions. Yeah, of course she did. That mostly have implicit negative answers, right? Okay, so she was asking questions backwards, right? So she was saying, are you saying that women should stay out when they care about all these issues, right? And the answer was no to all of that, right? So this is good. She criticizes her opponents. She does this. Yes, she does this by quoting self-contradictory remarks. Well, they did not contradict themselves, right? Somebody choose this one. Okay. The quotations that she refers to. Well, she quotes them in order to better state their points, right? She wanted to say, okay, you say women should be quote unquote gentle and stuff like this, but why can't this go along with the idea of justice and whatever, right? So not this. She illustrates each of her central ideas with an emotionally powerful. So up till this point it was okay, but we don't have any anecdotes in this passage. She emphasizes the reasonableness of her views. Well, fine, I'll let this go. By presenting them as though they are universally held. Okay, so now, I mean, for this answer, it's incredibly vague. So you could be thinking, but how are you going to deny A here? This is way more specific and to the point, right? She uses a lot of rhetorical questions, and she herself answers no to all of that, right? She herself answers the question. So A is the answer here. What about 34? How does Smith develop her arguments about slavery as a political question over the course of the passage? Okay, so this, if you spotted it when you were reading it for the first time, yeah, good job, right? It's that point that we talked about, right? Initially, she says, okay, well, if it's a political question, we'll stay out of it. But it's not only a political question, it's a question of morality and religion and all of that, right? So she was saying, okay, let's say it's not a political question, but it's also all these other questions. But in the end, she says, well, even if it is only a political question, we still have a stake in it because this concerns our country, right? So, okay, so let's say, take a look. She claims the designation is an outdated one. Okay, so outdated is not an idea that is mentioned in this passage, okay? What's a similar word to outdated? The one that we talked about, I think yesterday or the day before. Obsolete, right? Okay, so that's a word that you should know. And then offers alternative definitions. No. She dismisses the designation as too narrow. Okay, I think she does this, right? She says, well, it's not only a political question, right? It's also other questions, but then demonstrates its relevance to her audience. Later on, she does this, discuss that. So B is the answer. Wait, let's take a look at C and D first. She contends that the designation has become trite. What does trite mean? Cliche, right? Something too old, right? And then invites her audience to revitalize it. Well, no, we never discussed anything like this. She describes the meaning the designation has for men, and then challenges women to embrace it. So men was not a subject in this passage. You should see that this is irrelevant. So B is the right answer here. Summarizes the first paragraph. Okay, so the first paragraph was mostly this, right? So she states the opponent's view, right? I've heard it asserted by some or something like that, right? So some people say, or what was it? We are told, right? So she says we are told by a specific group of people that it's not within the province of women to discuss this issue, right? Okay, so A says she explains a conventional viewpoint. Yes, it's possible. That could qualify as the opponent's view, and presents evidence supporting it. No, she does not support it. She counters it. Rejects a claim. Yes, she does, and elaborates on her reasons. Yes, this is possible. Right? So this is the opponent's view, and then counter-arguing it. C introduces her subject. Okay, fine. Let's say that's okay, right? Because she talks about subject of slavery and whatnot, and provides historical background. We didn't talk about this. Right? D identifies a problem. Well, that could be a problem. The fact that some people say women should stay out of this, that could be presented as a problem, and proposes steps to remedy it. No, she does not talk about what we do. She doesn't take like a step-by-step approach. She doesn't say like, okay, first we need to do this, second we need to do something else. If we had that, we would have annotated it like a step-by-step approach, right? We don't have that. So B would be the right answer. 36, in the passage, Smith argues that it is possible for women to engage in which activity? Okay, so what can we do? Well, first of all, we have a line reference, but this one is pretty broad. So what I first want to do is go through all the answer choices before I go to the line reference questions. So acting according to humanitarian principles while preserving their femininity, right? This is a point that I was talking about, right? So she was saying, you know, you emphasize all these feminine qualities, like like women need to be peaceful. I'm paraphrasing, peaceful and gentle and stuff like that, kind. But still, how does that go against me trying to help my neighbors and stuff like that, right? So this is okay. Adhering to personal morality, possibly, right? So, I mean, she wants to do something that's right, right? While being politically neutral. Well, it's not neutral, right? She clearly has a stance. She wants to stand up for the slaves, right? Contributing to their family's financial security. What? Something that's never mentioned. Resisting calls for war while still opposing, resisting calls for war? Well, no, she didn't actually resist the call for war. She just said, if a war breaks out, my family and friends, they need to go fight, right? So not necessarily resisting that. So A should be the answer here. And now you just need to look for that, right? So let's take a look at 26. It says, may not the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit. Okay, so this is meek and quiet spirit. This is what's expected of for women, right? They need to be meek and they need to be quiet. But can that exist with an upright mind and enlightened intellect? So she's saying these are not opposing ideas, right? They can go along with each other. Right? So this is our answer. 38, U.S. Constitution requires which action on the part of the northern free states if slaves were to revolt? They need to fight alongside, quote unquote, the tyrant being the South instituting slavery, right? So northern states would have to sever ties. Well, it's not sever ties, they need to fight, right? Northern states would have to give shelter, not give shelter, would have to help the slave states fight the slaves' rebellion. Here we go, right? D, northern states would have to provide financial assistance. It's not financial assistance, they would need to go fight and potentially die because of it. Fighting alongside the tyrant, as she puts it. C. 39, in context, what is the main effect of Smith's use of, okay, so this, we've been doing this all the time, right? So why would you use such a word? Why would you use such a connotative diction? Okay, so let us assume that this is our goal. So it identifies a specific individual as oppressive. So oppressive is okay, but it's not a specific person that she's referring to. She's referring to the South and the institution of slavery itself, right? So it's wrong because of this part, right? You could be very tempted by this answer choice because oppressive, but you should read other answer choices also. And it's not talking about a specific person. Didn't mention that anywhere in the passage, right? The North has to fight alongside the tyrant. Would that be one person? No, right? It highlights the threat of aggression from abroad? No, right? It critiques the limited roles for women. Well, no, it's not about the limited roles, right? You wouldn't, I mean, in order for you, I mean, why would you use the word tyrant? You want to say, hey, you're like a tyrant, right? It's putting the emphasis on who's being called a tyrant, not the one oppressed. So it emphasizes the unjustness. So here we go, slavery. So D is the right answer. And slumbering here, so dormant means sleeping, right? So she wanted to awaken this slumbering power of women, right? So that's why it's C. Lethargic is lazy, right? She's not necessarily suggesting it's lazy. She's just saying it just didn't, it didn't catch fire just yet, right? So that's why it's C here. 41, most strongly suggests that slavery affects the United States by, who chose A here? B? C? D? Okay, so slavery affects the country, right? So what should you do? I mean, what I would do here is slavery affecting the United States. So with this in mind, if you can't really, I mean, if you're unsure of this, I mean, yeah, if you can spot an answer choice right away, if something sticks out, yeah, go for it. But I mean, go for it and then confirm with the line reference. But if you can't, go the other way, right? Just go to the line reference first and think about, okay, so which one is talking about slavery's effect on the United States, right? So why don't we go to line 48. 48 says, will it be easy to convince them that it is no concern of theirs that their home are rendered desolate and their habitations the abodes of wretchedness, right? Okay, so who's them? These are women, right? These are women, but she's saying, yeah, you know, like if all our husbands and, you know, brothers and those men, they go to war, how will you convince them that your homes are going to be desolate because, you know, like everybody left and everybody died kind of thing? Like, so it's not necessarily, oh, okay, potentially it could be actually. So for A, you're going to say it's talking about the effects of the war, right? So potentially A could be okay. What about the next line reference? 59. Okay, may we not permit a thought to stray beyond the narrow limits of our family circle and of the present hour. So, I mean, this has nothing to do with the United States. It's talking about women's boundaries, right? Women's boundaries are too narrow. So B is not an answer. What about C? Where's C? Okay, 68. Shall we silently behold the land which we love? Okay, so that's probably the United States. That could refer to the United States. With all the heartwarm affection of children, made a hissing and a reproach throughout the world. What's a reproach? Huh? Yeah. If you reproach, it means to criticize, right? So it's criticized throughout the world, right? Because of this. So yeah, so criticized by world because of slavery. So that's possible. What about D? What's the line number for D?
73, 77.
No, so 73 says no. The events of the last 2 years have cast their dark shadows before, overclouding the bright prospects of the future and shrouding the destinies of our country. Okay, possibly, right? So, I mean, so it's saying prospects of the future clouded, right? So that's kind of what we have. Okay, so let's go to 41. So lowering the country's reputation. So this could this could be paired with this, right? Criticized by the world. So this is one possibility. Leading many women to disavow their allegiance. Well, no, we don't have that idea. Causing violent conflicts in many areas. No, we don't have that. Well, this was talking about the effects of the war. It's not talking about the conflict itself, right? So can't do that. The weakening the authority of the country's government. No, we never talked about the authority. So it should be A and then C, right? Okay, let's go to that last passage. Okay. So, passage 1 is it's titled "Reflections on the Revolution in France." So, what do we say about the revolution in France? If we're talking about the French Revolution, Usually they're not going to talk about it in a positive light. They're going to say, hey, what if something like that happens in our country? We don't want that happening. Okay? So that's usually the point that people take with the French Revolution in SAT passages. So you're going to get like English people discussing the French Revolution. They're going to say, let's not make something like that happen in our country. What are the ways in which we can prevent that? What kind of people, we've read that passage, right? What kind of people are forwarding an event like that? And who could be the people who are potentially leading an event similar to that in our country, kind of thing, okay? And passage 2 is by Thomas Paine, right? We've read Thomas Paine before, right? What did he write?
Common sense.
What was Common Sense about?
It's common sense for us to
Who's us?
the American people.
Huh?
The American people.
Okay. Why do you need to quote that? What was Common Sense about? We talked about this. Sorry. Common Sense was saying United States should be independent, should be an independent country. It's the first time it was mentioned, right? Before that, no one really thought about that. Okay, no, everybody was just trying to reconcile with the British Empire. So that was the first time that idea was mentioned. Okay, so let's take a look here. To avoid the evils of inconstancy and versatility, 10,000 times worse than those of obstinacy and the blindness prejudice. All right, so what is this? Well, this thing is modifying the evils, right? And this thing is also modifying the evils, right? So it's basically just saying, to avoid the evils, we have consecrated the state. That's what it's saying, right? What does it mean, consecrate? What does consecrate mean?
Make sacred.
Yes, make sacred, make holy, right? So what does the state mean? Is it talking about their condition? That is it talking about that state, or then what is it? What does the state refer to? Yeah. Yeah, the country or government. Okay, so they want to, okay, I don't know about they, he wants to avoid the evils, and so we have consecrated the state. We made the state sacred or holy. Well, what does that mean? I have no idea what do you mean exactly, consecrated state? That should be your question, right? What do you mean when you say consecrated the state? That should be your question, okay? Well, anyway, let's think about the evils then. What are the evils? The evils of inconstancy, so like change, right? And versatility. Okay, so like change, something that changes often. So that the evils of change, let's just say that, right? It's talking about the reflections on the revolution in France, so I kind of get it, right? When we say change, yeah. To avoid the evils of change. And this is 10,000 times worse than those refers to what? The evils, right? The evils of obstinacy and the blindness. What does this mean? Obstinacy, huh? Stubborn, right? So being stubborn is, being fickle, right? Prone to change is worse than being stubborn, right? But he wants to avoid that. He wants to avoid changing a lot, like being frivolous, right? we have consecrated a state that no man should approach to look into its. What does it refer to? When it says it's here? The state. No man should approach the state's defects or corruptions except, so this but is used as an except, right? But except with due caution. So he's saying we need caution. We need caution when we approach the nation's defects or corruptions, or the government's corruptions or defects, right? So there are going to be defects or corruptions. I think he kind of takes that for granted. It's a kind of a given here. But he's saying, hey, when you're trying to criticize the state, or if you're trying to approach, I don't know exactly what he means approach. I don't care. But when we're approaching it, when we're dealing with, when we're addressing the defects in the government, we should be careful. That's what he means, consecrated the state, right? Right? And then he says that he should, who does he refer to?
The man.
The man, right? So this is just a random man, right? So it's just talking about anybody, right? That a man should never dream of beginning its, what does it refer to? The states. The state's reformation. No one should try to change the government by its subversion. What does subversion mean? So this is something that you should know. Subvert. What does that mean?
Undermining power.
Hurt or undermine power, right? By its subversion, right? So no one should try to change a country by hurting it, in easy terms, right? You shouldn't try to change the country or government by hurting it. That he should approach to the faults of the state as to the wounds of a father. Oh, okay. So I mean, this analogy just really explained it for me, right? So when you're approaching the faults of the state, when you're approaching the faults of the nation, you should approach it very carefully. Like, okay, how would you approach it? Let's say your dad's hurt, okay? He has a big wound. How would you approach that? Is that how you approach? No, you'd be very careful, right? So that, I don't know what kind of relationship you have with your dad, but you know, like common sense, you would be pretty careful, right? With pious awe, right? Okay, yeah, and trembling solicitude. Yeah, you kind of get the idea, right? So it's elaborating on that. So okay, so when approaching fault of state, what should you do? You should use caution, right? That's his thing here, right? All right. So that's what we have. Let's go to the next part. What does it say? By this wise prejudice. So what does this wise prejudice mean? What does this refer to? So obviously he's telling us, hey, I've mentioned the prejudice before, but it's a wise one, right? So he's describing this in a positive light, in a positive connotation. What would that wise prejudice be?
Acting in caution.
Yes. So this wise prejudice is you should always be careful when you're approaching the faults of the state, right? So by this wise prejudice, we are taught to look with horror on those children. Okay, so there are those children, right? There's a group of people called those children. So using this prejudice. So we have this prejudice in mind, right? It's a wise one, right? You should be careful when you're approaching the faults of the state. And by this wise prejudice, we are taught to look with horror on those children. So we need to look at these people in a certain light, in a negative light, right? So who are these people of their country who are prompt rashly to hack that aged parent in pieces? Okay, so there are people. So I guess these are the people who want to forward a revolution in France, or who are, prompting the revolution in France, right? So these people, what do they want to do? They just want to, hurt the government, right? Hack that aged parent. That parent is going to be, parent is the equivalent of the country or the nation. Or the government, right? And put him into the kettle of magicians. Okay, the parent. So these children, what do they want to do? They want to hack the parent. They want to put him into a kettle of magicians in hopes that by their, so their refers to the magicians, right? By their poisonous weeds and wild incantations. What's incantation? Like charm or magic, right? By their wild incantations, they may regenerate the paternal constitution. So what does paternal constitution mean? Father's body, right? So who are those children? Those children, they just send their dad to magicians and renovate their father's life. Right? So they just hope. They just send them to a magician and hope. Hey, I hope they help dad recover, right? Pretty irresponsible, right? So, but this person is not those children, right? He's taught to look on those children with horror, right? Okay, so this first paragraph. So we have two groups of people, right? This is the author, this is the narrator, this is the person who's speaking, and his point of view. We should approach the state's faults with caution, but on the other hand, we have those children. They are pretty careless, and they want to potentially subvert the system, right? Good? But how should we look on them? We should say, hey, they're really bad, right? They're really bad. Okay, let's take a look. Society is indeed a contract. Okay, society is a contract. Okay, so this is how I'm going to define society here. So now we're moving on to something completely different, right? So now that we've established that we need to have this wise prejudice, right? This is this wise prejudice. I'm just going to refer to this as WP now, right? Subordinate contracts for objects of mere occasional interest. Okay, so, so I guess, like within contracts, there are subordinate contracts and superior contracts, I guess, right? So he's making more categories. So what are subordinate contracts? These are for objects of mere occasional interest, may be dissolved at pleasure. But the state ought not to be considered as nothing better than a partnership agreement in a trade of pepper and coffee, calico or tobacco, or some other such low concern, to be taken up for a temporary little interest and to be dissolved by the fancy of the parties, right? Okay, so so these ones, okay, so these contracts that are mentioned here, these refer to the subordinate contracts, right? He's giving us examples of subordinate contracts here. So what are the examples of subordinate contracts? Like you're trading pepper and coffee, right? So it's like a trade agreement. Those kinds of contracts, he's saying, are subordinate contracts. They're less important, right? But he's saying society or the state should not be considered this, right? So he's saying, okay, society is a contract, but at the same time, there's something called a subordinate contract. And this is less important, and the examples that he gives here is like a trade contract, right? These are less important, and they're okay to be dissolved. Like, you can dissolve this if you want. But what about these? You shouldn't dissolve. I mean, it's not. You can't, ought not to be dissolved by the fancy of the parties, right? Just because you think the trade is off, you can't just, call it off. You can't just say, hey, I don't like this society, get rid of it, right? You can't say that. That's what he's saying. So he's making a distinction between society as a contract and other subordinate contracts, right? So this is a point of comparison. Okay, so we're seeing this comparison. We see a lot of comparisons. Like in paragraph 1, the comparison was between those who have that wise prejudice and those children who don't have any regard for that wise prejudice. In the second paragraph, it's between society being a superior contract and other subordinate contracts. It's saying it's not the same, right? Okay, it is to be looked on, so society is to be looked on with other reverence. Okay, so we should revere this. So we shouldn't dissolve this. We should revere this. It's to be revered, right? So we should look up to it because, okay, so here's a cause and effect, right? It is not a partnership in things subservient only to the gross animal existence. Okay, so it's not this, that's what it's saying. It's not just of an animal existence. It's not of a temporary and perishable nature. It's not these. It is a partnership in all science, a partnership in all art, a partnership in every virtue and in all perfection. Okay, so this is what it is, and these are what it's not, right? Good? Okay, questions so far? Okay, next paragraph. It's not the next paragraph, I guess. Next part. As the ends of such a partnership cannot be obtained in many generations, it becomes a partnership not only between those who are living, okay, so not only, so what's going to happen after but is more important, but between those who are living, those who are dead, and those who are to be born. Okay, so the point that he adds here is, society as a contract, you can't really dissolve it. You need to look at it with reverence. Why? Because it's a contract not only among those who are living, but it's a contract between those who are living and dead and those who are to be born, right? Okay, so it's a contract between all these people. The municipal corporations of that universal kingdom. Wait, what? What? What in the world does this mean? Well, first of all, let's start here. What does that universal kingdom refer to? So obviously we talked about some kind of kingdom, I guess. That's what he's suggesting, right? What could qualify as that kingdom? Something that he's just mentioned, right? So I guess it's the kingdom for, that includes the living, the dead, and those who are not yet born, right? So the universal kingdom includes the past, the present, and the future, right? That's the universal kingdom, right? What does municipal mean? Municipalities? You guys never heard of municipalities? What does municipal mean?
Like a corporate status. No?
Yeah.
City or town.
Yeah, okay, so something local, right? That's what municipal is, right? Okay, so who are the municipal corporations? Okay, so he's saying this. This living plus dead plus born, this is the universal kingdom. What's the municipal corporation of this then? I guess just the living, right? I mean, perhaps he's just talking about just one part, right? So since it's a united, whatever, United Kingdom, right? It's between the living dead and and who are to be born. He's saying, just because the living wants to detract this contract, they can't do it. They can't do it because they're only part of it. It's a universal kingdom between the past, present, and future. Just because the present people want to do it, you can't dissolve it. You know what I mean? Are not morally at liberty at their pleasure and on their speculations of a contingent improvement, wholly to separate and tear asunder the bands. You can't tear apart the bands, right? Because you're just a part of it. You're just a municipal corporation. This whole thing is a universal kingdom, though. That's what he's saying. You guys get it? Okay. And to dissolve it into an unsocial, uncivil, unconnected chaos of elementary principles. You can't dissolve it into this, right? Good? Okay, questions? Okay, let's go to the second paragraph. Okay, so first passage, pretty easy. We don't have many points. It was all rhetoric, right? The wise prejudice was this. When you're approaching the faults of the state, you need to be extremely careful. But there are people who don't do that. We don't really like these people. That's what he said. And then he said, society is a contract and it is to be distinguished with subordinate contracts. You can dissolve subordinate contracts when you want, but not for society as a contract, because this is to be revered. And the reason why is because this is a united kingdom. It's between the past, present, and the future. This contract is, right? And so, just because the living people want to improve it, right? Just because they have an idea for an improvement and just on their speculations and just because of their pleasure, they can't dissolve it. You shouldn't do that, right? Good? Okay, let's go to the next passage then. Every age and generation must be free to act for itself. Okay, so right off the bat, it disagrees with passage 1. Do you see that? Right? What did passage 1 say? Every generation is not free to do what it wants. Why? Because it's a universal kingdom. We're all bound together, the past, present, and future. But what about this guy? This guy says, no, every generation for itself, right? In all cases, as the ages and generations which preceded it. So every generation is free, okay? So every generation should be free to act as they want, right? The vanity and presumption of governing beyond the grave, right? Okay, yeah. So this terrible notion and the vanity of governing beyond the grave. Even when you're dead, you're still trying to govern, right? That's pretty bad. That's what he's saying. Is the most ridiculous and insolent of all tyrannies, right? Okay, so he doesn't like this one bit, right? He doesn't like this idea. He doesn't like this. He doesn't like governing beyond the grave. If you're dead, stay dead. That's what he's saying, right? Okay, so this is kind of included here, right? It's implied here. Every generation must be free to act for itself. It shouldn't be the ones dead that are governing the living, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the second paragraph. It says, man has no property in man. Okay, I guess what's kind of omitted here is a man has no property in another man, right? So a man cannot own another man, right? Neither has any generation a property in the generations which are to follow, right? Okay, good, right? Just like, it's a comparison, right? Just as a man cannot own another man, a generation cannot own another generation, right? Okay, so cannot own. They can't have a property here. The Parliament of the people of the 1688, or of any other period, had no more right to dispose of the people of the present day. Okay, so he's elaborating on his point, right? So people in the past, they can't really govern people today. They don't have an ownership in the people today, right? Or to bind or to control them in any shape whatever, then the parliament or the people of the present day have to dispose of, bind or control those who are to live 100 years, 100 or 1,000 years hence from now on, right? Okay, so he's making that comparison. These people don't own us as much as we do not own people who live thousands years from now on, right? We don't own people in the future, right? And the past generation, they do not own us, right? Nobody owns anybody. No generation owns any generation. Same idea, right? Every generation free. Every generation govern themselves. No generation can rule another generation. Okay, and then it says, every generation is and must be competent to all the purposes which its occasions require. Okay, so this is situation, right? So there's going to be certain situations. There's going to be certain situations, and every generation must be able to cope. They must have the ability to cope with every situation, right? They must be competent to cope with their own wars, their own social problems, right? They should be competent to deal with their own problems. It is the living and not the dead that are to be accommodated. Okay, so living are the ones who should be accommodated. Okay, so that's the idea. Living is to be accommodated. When man ceases to be meaning what? What does this mean? When man ceases to be? When man dies, right? When man ceases to exist. When man ceases to be, his power and his wants cease with him. Okay, so yeah. So when a man dies, his power and his wants, they also die, right? And having no longer any participation in the concerns of this world, he has no longer any authority in directing. Okay, so no authority, right? So dead people, no authority. Like living should be accommodated, dead, they don't have any authority. Right? So the dead people don't have any authority. Who in directing who shall be its governors, or how its government shall be organized, or how administered. Right? Yeah, good. Those who have quitted the world, okay, so who quitted the world? The dead, right? So the dead people, and those who are not yet arrived at it, who are these? Huh? What? People not born, so people in the future, right? So the past and the future generation are as remote from each other as the utmost stretch of mortal imagination can conceive, right? They're so far from each other, you can't even imagine. That's what it's saying, right? So the past and the future, like, they're so far apart, right? So they're totally unrelated, is what it's saying, right? What possible obligation then can exist between them, right? Okay, so he's saying, so there can be no obligation. So that's his point, right? So the past and then the future, they don't have any kind of relationship, right? They don't have any kind of relationship. So with the same reasoning, you don't have any obligations. The past generation can't hold the future generations for any obligations or so on, right? What rule or principle can be laid down that two non-entities, what's an entity? A being, something that exists, okay? Non-entities, they both don't exist, right? The past, people in the past, right? Do they exist? No, they're a non-entity. What about the future? Same, they're not born, non-entity, right? Two non-entities, the one out of existence and the other not in, and who never can meet in this world, that one should control the other to the end of time, right? So he's saying it's ridiculous. They're not even going to meet each other. They don't exist. But you're trying to say the past can own the future, right? So he's saying no, you can't do that, right? Okay, so same idea. And then it says the circumstances of the world are continually changing. Yeah. Okay, so that's circumstance changing. That's his new point. Circumstance changes. And the opinions of men change also. Okay, so opinions also change, circumstances change. And as government is for the living and not for the dead, it is the living only that has any right in it. Okay, so only the living has any right in it. Circumstance changes, opinions change, right? And based on this, opinions. So based on this, living is the only one with rights, right? That which may be thought right and found convenient in one age may be thought wrong and found inconvenient in another. Yeah, you know, some people might say, I don't know, like, think about it, okay? Like, I don't have any, I'm not saying anything, but I don't know. Some people, like, okay, women used to be not able to vote, right? They couldn't vote, but, you know, like circumstance changes, opinion change, right? Opinions change. And so they changed it, right? And it's the living who should be accommodated. It's not what the past people think, right? They can't necessarily govern people in the present. That's kind of like that idea, right? In such cases, who is to decide, the living or the dead? Is he really asking this question? No, he's just saying, yeah, it's the living that should be accommodated. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so he said, okay, every generation must be free to act for itself, right? And living should be accommodated. It's not the dead that should be having any authority here. The past and the future, they don't have any obligations. They're not related to each other. They have no connection to each other. And circumstances and opinions change, so the living should be the ones having the rights. They should be the ones making the decisions. It shouldn't be the ones in the past making the decisions for the future generations, right? Good? Okay, who has questions on, well, not for the questions, but on the passage? Any questions? Okay, so let's take a look. 32, passage 1, Burke indicates that a contract between a person and society differs from other contracts mainly in its, okay, so it's asking for that comparison, right? So society being a contract, and then we have subordinate contracts. What's the difference, right? So he said, yeah, these can be dissolved, right? These are for mere pleasure and whatever, but this, no, it should be revered. It's something much more important. But A says brevity. Possibly brevity meaning what? What does? Yes, brevity means short, right? So this one is okay. I think I saw a word like temporary in it. Prominence, I don't know. Prominence? What does prominent mean? Oh, sorry. The question was a contract between a person and society. So we can say brevity, right? We need to say it's not brief, right? It's not brief. So complexity. It doesn't have to do anything with complexity. It's not precision. Seriousness and permanent. Okay, this one is probably the answer. Important, and it's not temporary, right? How do I know this? Because in the passage, I think they mentioned the characteristics of subordinate contracts. They talked about subordinate contracts and how they were temporary and they were of trivial matters and stuff like that. So 33, state. Okay, so this is not going to be the condition. This is going to be the government probably. So which one which one could refer to government here? D, political entity, right? Political being. As used in line 22, low. Okay, so let's take a look. Do we have any contrasting ideas here or some other low concern to be okay, so yeah, okay, so this was when we were comparing subordinate contracts with society, right? So subordinate contracts are of low concern, right? So it's like a trade of pepper and coffee, right? Compared to society, that's a low concern. That's what he's saying, okay? And these are like temporary interests and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go here. Petty sounds okay, yeah? It's not important. It's less important. So this is okay. It's not talking about in terms of strength, right? It's not about strength. Inadequate? Well, no, they could be perfectly adequate, but he's just saying the issue itself, like it does not matter so much. So petty is the right answer. It's not depleted. 35, it can reasonably be inferred from passage 2 that Paine views historical precedents as, so this is looking at passage 2, so how would he feel about historical precedents? So basically this would be rephrased as something in the past. So how would he think about the past? He would say, well, they have no real bearing on what the present generation is allowed to do and not allowed to do, right? We don't care about the past, right? Generally helpful? No. Surprisingly difficult? For what? Why are we talking about difficulty? Frequently responsible? Well, it's not human progress. Irrelevant. There you go, right? He's saying it has no bearing to the present. 36, how would Paine most likely respond to Burke's statement in 30 to 34? Okay, so again, for these kinds of questions, you're not guessing. You're not looking at passage 2 saying, okay, so this guy uses a lot of rhetoric, but I think he's a pretty agreeable guy, so I think he's going to agree with passage 1. No, you're not going to do that. You're just going to repeat one of his points. That's all you should do. But I want to check this first, 30 to 34. Let's go and check. 30 says, as the ends of such a partnership cannot be attained in many generations, it becomes, okay, so this is saying, yeah, it's society is a contract between the past, present, and the future. What would Thomas Paine say to that? He would say that's ridiculous, right? He would say, no, it's the living that should be accommodated. They have no relationship to each other, the present, the past, and the future, right? He would assert that the notion of a partnership across generations is less plausible to the people. What? Okay, so this is a comparison. He's saying it's plausible to some people, but less so for other people. So we didn't have that kind of comparison, so I'm going to get rid of this. What about B? He would argue that there are no politically meaningful links. Okay, so this is good, between the dead, living, and the unborn. There you go. He's saying there's no relevance. That's all passage 2 was talking about, right? So it's just repeating his point. So since we chose B, and you have a line reference question right after that. You need to look for a line reference that discusses this. No politically meaningful links before the dead, the living, and the unborn. Be extremely careful. You're not looking for evidence for this. You're looking for this statement itself. No link between the dead, living, and the unborn. So just look for that only. So 41. No link, no link, no link. Okay, so it's saying they must be free to act as it pleases, but the no link bit, it's not here. I need to find that no link between the past, present, and future, right? So I'm looking for that. What's the next line reference? 43, 45. No, this is about governing beyond the grave. He's saying governing beyond the grave is ridiculous, right? So what about the next one? 56. Okay, thanks. It is the living and not the dead that are to be accommodated. No, of course not, right? Why? Because I'm looking for no links between the past, present, and future. What about the next one? 67. What possible obligation then can exist between them? Yeah, there you go, right? Them being the living the dead and the unborn, right? So there you go. He's saying no obligation, no connection. What rule or principle can be laid down? That two non-entities and one blah, 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 right? So he's saying no obligation. So this would most closely suggest that one. Okay, let's take a look at 38. Which choice best describes how Burke would most likely have reacted to Paine's remarks in the final paragraph? Right, okay, so what would passage 1 say to this, right? So circumstances and opinions change, so the living should be the ones making the decisions. What would passage 1 say? No, society is a contract, right? Society is a contract between the living dead and the unborn. So you can't just change just because you want it, right? So no with approval. Resignation, what? No, skepticism, disapproval. Okay, so these two sound okay. I'm just going to take a look at disapproval first because that sounds better. Because changing conditions are insufficient justification. Yes, because you can't do it. You can't do it. Nothing is a sufficient justification for this guy, right? You can't do it. That's what passage 1 said, right? Society is a contract that cannot be dissolved at mere pleasure. At what, I mean, just because you think you're improving it, you can't do it, right? Kind of thing. Okay, so where would that be? So we chose this. Changing conditions are insufficient, right? Changing conditions are insufficient to changing. So you can't change the form of government just because you want. Just because you feel like you can improve upon it. You can't do that. So that's the line that I want to look for here. So let's start looking backwards, starting from line 34. Because I know, like in the beginning, this was just his beginning, right? He doesn't talk about society as a contract here. He talks about the wise prejudice and those who don't believe in the wise prejudice. So not here. I want to start here strategically. So let's take a look at 34 first. So in 34 it says the municipal corporations are not morally at liberty. Okay, there you go, right? So he's saying the living of that universal kingdom, the universal kingdom being everybody, the past, present, and future, right? So they can't dissolve at their pleasure. They can't just speculate and they can't just speculate on a contingent improvement and say, hey, since we want to improve this, let's change this. They can't do that. That's what he's saying. So that line, right? So D. What about 40? Relationship. Okay, so I mean, they go against each other, right? So passage 2 challenges the primary argument. Yes, he does. Yes, he does, right? Passage 2 says every generation must be free to act as it pleases. Passage 1 says no, every generation cannot, and this is okay. Advocates an alternative approach? No, they're going against each other. Provides further evidence to support an idea introduced in passage 1? Really? So they agree? No. Exemplifies? No, they don't agree. 41, main purpose of both passages. Okay, both passages. So, okay. I mean, they talk about what you should do in terms of governing, right? So let's choose an answer that has that. A says, suggest a way to resolve a particular political struggle. So it's trying to trick you into, they're both talking about the French Revolution. No one talked about it explicitly, right? So we don't know if this is a way to resolve the French Revolution or whatever. We can't say that. Discuss the relationship between people and their government. Perhaps you can say that. Yeah, people, like, people being the past, present, and future, like, and you can't really change the government just because you want to. So potentially B. What about C? Evaluate the consequences of rapid... Really? We don't... Consequences of the change? We have a change and a cause and effect? No. Right? D. Describe the duties that governments have. Of course not. Right? What kind of duties do they have? We never mention. We don't talk about any kind of duties. So D is gone. So B, right? B is the right answer. Okay. Any questions on this set? Okay, any questions on any of the passages in that book then? Which passage do you guys agree with? Passage 1 or passage 2?
2.
Who says 1? No one says 1? Okay. Okay, if you have a question, please ask. If you don't, then we're going to talk about some test stuff for your test tomorrow. So, when you're taking the test, like I said, we already talked about this, okay? I mean, like I was talking to someone's mom, and she said, "Oh, my child, he or she was working on the first passage, but it took way too much time, so he or she said, he or she kind of screwed up." That should not happen, ever, right? If you're reading the first passage and you feel kind of funky, just move on. Doesn't matter if you're like right in the middle of the passage, you should still move on. If you're getting lost in the middle of the first passage, you should move on. Okay? Make that conscious decision. Don't get carried away. Don't be in the moment. You shouldn't be in the moment immersed in the test-taking experience. Never, ever. That's what's going to screw you over. Okay? So, like I said, if the literature passage is hard, skip it. Okay? And go to passage 2. But sometimes, okay, so here's the thing. There's sometimes some instances in which passage 3, the science passage, is pretty difficult, right? You know that passage that we read today about pleasant to touch, that passage? That was actually a third passage, okay? Yeah, that was a third passage, okay? So there could be, well, it wasn't, okay, that passage was a little bit tricky because it had way too much information. It's not like a traditional third passage. Third passages are a little bit easier than that usually. But in that case, what happens is you get like a really short fifth passage. Like it's a science passage, and usually the short science passages, they're the ones that discuss the hypotheses, right? The ones that say, we postulate, we speculate, right? They explain like a thing briefly and then they give you a hypothesis, or they just explain something. Like that DNA passage, you guys remember that? Like that DNA passage, it was really short, right? It did have some information in it, but it was really short. It was like less than 60 lines or something like that, right? So in that case, so if you take a look at the third passage and it doesn't feel right. Like I mean, you just know. If you just looked at the third passage, like we did today, the pleasant to touch passage, it looks hard, right? I mean, even before you start reading, you can sense it, right? You see all those terms in the passage, you see those big words, and you see that it's long and it has a lot of information, then potentially you want to do this passage first then, okay? But you might be wrong. You might be wrong as in, like just because you suck, like you look at the third passage and you say, oh, this is a hard passage, but it turns out it's not a hard passage. Okay, well, then I can't really say anything. But if you have a third passage that has a lot of information on it, usually, if you're right, the fifth passage is going to be really short, So just do that first then. In that case, you would do 2, 5, 3, 1, 4. Right? Is that okay? Okay, and again, when do you mark, when do you bubble your answer sheet? After each passage, okay? After each passage, you're going to do it. And, okay, what about the questions that I'm not sure of? Still bubble them, okay? Still bubble them. What if I can't properly erase it? You can erase it. I mean, the answer sheets, they catch up on, they can catch that. Like, okay, so if you use a pencil and then you bubble A, but later on you want to change this to B, you kind of erase this and then you move to B, the scanner will sense it. They are capable of that. So it's okay. Okay? Don't be paranoid about that. But it's important that you bubble in first. At least do an initial guess. Okay? And make sure to guess. If you run out of time tomorrow, make sure to guess all the questions. Okay? What I don't want to hear, spend too much time on passage 1. No. Yeah. No. 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 Just no. Okay. Okay. What else? Study for math, please. Okay. And solving math sections does not equal studying for math. Okay? A lot of you just solve like a math section and then you just grade it and then you solve it again and you're like, okay, Mom, I studied for math. No, that's not studying. Okay? Like I said, you can't spot your mistakes. If you want to solve a section, but then do a blind review. See if you can find what you got wrong. Okay? You know what I mean, right? Before you check your answers, you should do a blind review. And also, okay, here's the thing. You're never in a good condition. You're never under good conditions when you're solving the math section on the real test. So when you take the math section, it's after you took the reading, it's after you took the writing. You're not at 100%. You're operating at like 70 or 80%. So don't trick yourself into thinking that you can get all the questions right on the math section. Like on a Saturday morning, you just open up your math book and you just solve it and you're like, I'm good to go. No, you're never gonna be in that condition when you take the math section on the real test, okay? So, I don't know. Well, I would say get drunk and take it. No, I'm just kidding. But you guys, that's a joke. But take it when you're like really tired. If you like, you're like just, you think you're gonna fall asleep. You just did your homework. You're mentally tired. Try it right then. And then see the mistakes. And then look at the mistakes that you make. And those mistakes will happen on test day if you don't address those problems. Okay? So take it when you're tired, the math section. It's not for when you're 100%. Okay? And yeah, that and what else? Okay, so here's the thing. So next week we're doing pregame, right? We're gonna be doing a little bit more passages than we're doing right now, and we're going to take a more in-depth look at each of the passages. Like we're gonna look at science passages, like for almost like a week, and then move on, kind of thing. You need to, okay, so you know all, even if you feel like you know all the methodology, you need to remember the passages. You need to remember the passages. Okay, I'm serious. Okay? And like that book, you need to kind of review it. You know how I always refer back to past passages, right? That's that gives you like a template to think about, right? So when you're in the actual test and when you're reading something and you see something like, okay, I can't think of another example. If it says like, we suspect and we postulate, oh, this is just like that honeybee passage that I've read, right? What happened in that passage? Oh, they give us like a hypothesis, they give us like a few hypotheses and then it proposes an experiment. So that's potentially what can happen. You need to get at that level. You need to remember the passages, okay? And it's better if you do more passages. That's why we're drilling more passages from now on, starting next week, okay? So keep that in mind, okay? So don't throw away your passages, okay? Just because you're done with it doesn't mean, just because you solved the question doesn't mean you're done with that passage. You need to memorize that passage almost. I mean, not like, I'm not saying memorize the wording, like memorize the sentences, but you like the general structure should all be in your mind. Whenever you get a new passage, okay, this passage is kind of like that passage. Like that's how I think, right? And that's how I came up with everything that I talk about. I just read a lot of passages and I think, okay, this is kind of like that. This is kind of like that Venus flytrap passage, or this is kind of like that knowing your reputation passage. You know, you start to see the similarities. You need to get at that level, unless you're like a really proficient reader and you just took the test for the first time and you got a perfect score on the first test. Sometimes sometimes it happens for people like that. But even for people like that, they already have a database in their minds. That's why they can do it. They've seen all the logical structures before, somewhere. That's why they can do it. Okay? So you need to be exposed to more passages and you need to remember them. That's how your score is gonna increase. Aside from, you know, like the nitty-gritty stuff, like you're getting vocabulary questions wrong or whatever. Right? I mean, yeah, everybody might have their own problems, but a common thing for everyone is what I just said. Okay? Okay, any questions? Okay, and quit all your activities that you don't care about. Okay? Tell your mom I said that. Quit all the activities you don't care about. Okay? Even if your mom forces you to do it so. Right? Every generation free to act for itself. Okay? No, it's not gonna help you. Okay, I can guarantee. Like all the stuff that you do that you don't care about, the activities, that's not gonna help you with your college application. The ones that are gonna count are the ones that you care about and the ones that you can write about. So focus on them and get a 1550 on the SAT. I know I sound like an Asian, but we are. So get a 1550 and go to Harvard. No, Harvard part was a joke, but okay. Any questions? Okay. If you don't, bye. Okay. You can go have lunch.